Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is the 8th installment of the Mission Impossible franchise. This one serving as a direct sequel to Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning, originally known as Dead Reckoning Part 1, as this was supposed to be Part 2, and meant to serve as a send-off to Tom Cruise's character Ethan Hunt. This movie takes place not long after the events of Dead Reckoning. The characters have retrieved the key that is supposed to access a device that can stop the entity that is intent on destroying the world, or at least causing mass destruction to the world as this massive AI problem. But right now, Ethan Hunt and the crew gotta figure out exactly how to access this device, how they're gonna be able to stop and contain the entity, while they're also dealing with Gabriel and his crew, who are still trying to harness the entity for themselves, and the government trying to figure out how to go around this whole situation that's happening. Second only to Superman, this was my most anticipated movie of the year. I've said it before, Ghost Protocol onward, I've been a massive fan of this franchise. It has been the perfect blend of spy and action. Typically those go hand in hand together, but regardless, they've just been awesome. The perfect movies to have a great time with, but give you something a little bit extra along the way. And it's fantastic. And this being marketed as The Final Reckoning, meant to be the send-off for Ethan Hunt, meant to be the concluding chapter in the Mission Impossible franchise, there's a lot riding on this one. You want it to go out with a bang. You want it to go out giving you a lot of closure. You want it to make you feel like you are satisfied with the way this franchise has gone, especially with just how much better it's been going in the last few years. I mean, Mission Impossible Fallout, I still consider to this day one of the best action movies I've ever seen. And Dead Reckoning felt for me like the perfect setup towards this movie. After I loved Dead Reckoning the way that I did, I couldn't wait to see how this would wrap it up. So yeah, I'll get the no shit Sherlock immediately out of the way. Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, he's great. I mean, I've called him the best action movie star that we have going today. I stand by that. This dude is just awesome. And you see just how much he invests into himself, into what he puts into his projects, and just how much this franchise really does mean to him. You see how much he puts into this character. You see how much he wants to wrap this story up for everybody. You can just see the passion that he has. It's very much exemplified in this movie. And what I love seeing with Ethan Hunt in this case is he knows just how high the stakes are. He knows there are big sacrifices he's going to have to make. You see that he has lost quite a bit along this long ride that has now been 8 movies. And what I like seeing with him and among other characters is just how impossible a lot of these missions have been. This one does, in a lot of ways, seem like one that just might be too much. Even with him, you see a little bit more vulnerability with him. You see a little bit more fear in him. And like, does he believe he can stop this? Is this something that they can win? I felt like a lot of that was sold through Tom Cruise's performance as this character he has played for almost 30 years now. Also, what I really appreciate with this movie is I think it did a very good job at really showing just the scale of a threat that the entity is. Not that the last movie didn't, but here we see more about how the government feels about this thing. Because in this one, it's Ethan Hunt and the IMF trying to relay to the government, no, you have to listen to us, you have to let us handle this, we know what we have to do. And the president, the government, they're in a really tough spot. They're just like, if you fail and this happens, the whole world's gonna be at war. You know, a lot of destruction is gonna happen. So many people are gonna die. Like, they're in a tough spot. It's like, what sort of calls do they make? Like, do they just trust in this group of people, or do they take matters into their own hands? Like, I love seeing the level of fear and the level of uncertainty that the entity brought upon the most powerful people in the world, because that is something a threat like this should make people feel. It was an element to the story that I think this movie really needed to have, and I'm glad it was here. Staying with the story though, I will say this much. When it comes to the exposition and the execution of the storytelling, it does admittedly feel a little clunky in this movie. I mean, this is a 3-hour-long movie, damn near 3 hours long, and I have made this case with a lot of different people. A lot of people out there will tell you that they don't like long movies. I tell them that's not true. What you don't like is a slow movie. Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning admittedly feels a bit slower than other Mission Impossible movies have. And the reasoning behind that is this movie, I get it, it wants to wrap it up all together as a franchise. So as a result, it throws in a lot more Easter eggs. It ties into a lot of different characters and maybe brings back some characters from previous movies. And that's one thing I'll say right there. If you're a die-hard Mission Impossible fan, like you have loved this franchise since the beginning, you've been along this whole ride, you've enjoyed every minute of it, you'll probably really appreciate that. If, however, you are someone like me and you didn't really get on board with this franchise until some of the later movies, some of these tie-ins and these Easter eggs that they have aren't going to hit as hard with you. And as a result of that, it will make certain moments feel a little bit slower because you won't be as invested. I will say, Dead Reckoning was also almost 3 hours long, but where I think Dead Reckoning did it better is, although it had a long runtime and it had a lot of exposition and it had a lot of storytelling, it found a good way to balance the storytelling with the action and with the characters. Like, it knew when to sprinkle in some fun, intense action here and there, or some suspenseful moments with certain characters. And above all, the best thing about Dead Reckoning was the chemistry between Ethan Hunt and the new character Grace, played by Hayley Atwell. Their chemistry was awesome. I loved seeing them on screen, having this sort of student-teacher dynamic, a little bit of the will they, won't they situation going on there. It brought a lot to Dead Reckoning that made you very attached to the story. The issue here in this movie is, for about, I want to say, 2/3 of this movie, which is damn near, I want to say, 2 hours long, it's not quite like that. Like, there's not a whole lot of action scenes, at least not enough that really stick with you in that sense. And more so than that, the characters are very split up for a while. And you can understand why. I mean, what they're going after is something really serious and really, you know, big scale that maybe to a degree they kind of need to be split up. I do understand that, but you can't deny part of what makes these Mission Impossible movies so great is not just Ethan Hunt, but his team, you know, the chemistry they all have together. In this one, you don't really see as much of that. You know, they don't really come together as a team until really the final act. At least that's how it kind of felt on my end. So as a result of that, the chemistry he has with the other characters, namely the chemistry he has with Grace, that's not as much in this movie as it was in the last movie. So as a result, when you have this really long story that's filled with a lot of exposition, you are kind of sitting there like, okay, when are we going to get to what we really want? And even still, kind of like I mentioned earlier, there are just characters in this movie that I didn't care about as much. Namely, characters, I will say, from previous movies that I think the movie wanted you to care about more, but I just didn't. Like, for example, you have the character Paris, who was in the last Mission Impossible movie. You know, she's now basically joined Ethan Hunt's crew. But again, I didn't really care about her character. She didn't really feel like she was part of this team. She just wants to get back at Gabriel from the last movie. So as a result, you feel like she's on a quest for vengeance and everything like that, and you know, you'd think you'd be on board with that because Gabriel's the villain of the story, but they just didn't do enough with her character that made me grow attached to her. Certainly not in the way I felt with the rest of Ethan Hunt's crew. Even Gabriel, the villain, as much as I appreciate the concept of his villain in the last movie, because I kind of compared his character and his team to like the orcs and Saruman and Lord of the Rings serving the entity, which, you know, in reference to Lord of the Rings would be like Sauron. In this one, he doesn't really do much more that really makes him more of a villain, because I was kind of hoping, in sort of that Saruman kind of way, hear me out on this, that he could kind of be that face, that image that you could root against. Because the entity's not really a character, the entity just exists. You know, it's out there and it needs to be stopped, but you need to root against someone. You need a villain, you need someone you can point at and be like, that needs to be stopped. That guy or that person needs to be stopped. I feel like the movie wanted to make him that, but I was never able to feel it in such a way. I mean, I understand he needed to be brought down, but I didn't really recognize him as one of the more iconic Mission Impossible villains that we have had. Like, I was not going to walk out of this movie remembering him. That was for sure. And that's kind of a disappointment because we've been building up on him for what is now 2 movies. But before anyone thinks I'm ripping on this movie too hard, let me get to the final act. Well, I want to say the last third. So really around the last hour of this movie. Because I would say the last hour of this movie is when the stunts really kick in, the action scenes really go hard, and we get some really intense moments. And I'm going to tell you, the last hour of this movie is undeniably fucking awesome. Like, there's a scene, we've got some brief glimpses of them in the trailer. There's a moment in a submarine and a moment on a plane, and it's some of the most insane stunt work and action sequences you'll ever see Tom Cruise do. And that's fucking saying something. Like, you watch these scenes and I'm just like, I don't know how much of this is real, how much of this was CGI'd. I imagine maybe not in overly abundant amount because Tom Cruise is so emphatic with his stunt work. But again, the fact that this man is in his 60s and he's doing his own stunt work and some of the most insane stunt work you will ever see in your life, it is absolutely mind-blowing. It just shows, again, the commitment he has to this movie and the commitment he has to giving us, the audience, a mind-blowing experience. And again, the stakes are high. It's intense. The stuff he has to do just doesn't feel human. You see what's going on. You see some of the things he has to do to get out of these situations. And you're sitting there and you're like, how would you survive? Would someone survive? Probably not, but you don't care because what's going on is fucking epic. And that did make me feel better about the movie because, you know, when you're along a long ride like that, you're going into that final act and you're like, man, I need this to pay off big time. And it does pay off. You get Tom Cruise doing very Tom Cruise things that just melt your brain. You also see his team really more in the forefront again, showcasing what they're really good at and how they're gonna pull this all off together. It's great to see Hayley Atwell's character Grace get a lot more time to shine at the end of this. You really feel like the skills she's developed and the things she's already been able to do very well really come into play at the end, which feels like a great full circle moment for her character in a way. Yeah, undeniably the last act of this movie, really for the final 45 minutes, I'm gonna say, I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I was doing this the whole time, just losing my shit over what I was seeing, and so were a lot of people in the theater. It just kind of makes you turn to the person next to you. You may not even know them. You're just like, holy fucking shit. And now when it comes to the movie itself, does it feel like a concluding chapter to a franchise? Does it feel like a true send-off to Mission Impossible? For me, I'm not really sure. The movie ends, and it has a very definitive end, but for me, I do look at it and I go, does it feel like the end of a franchise or just the end of a movie? Because really, you look back on every Mission Impossible movie and they all had a pretty definitive end to themselves. Like, you know, the mission happens, you know, the characters do what they have to do and it's over. This one admittedly kind of felt like that as well. And I can sort of understand why they would take that route because, you know, if this movie makes a ton of money, which so far it has, who's to say that this is the last Mission Impossible movie? Chances are Tom Cruise will maybe look at that and he'll be like, well, maybe we could come back and do it again. But they have marketed forever that this is the final reckoning for a reason. This is Ethan Hunt's send-off. So as a result of that, if it was truly meant to be that, I kind of wish, in terms of the ending of this movie, they maybe would have committed to that a little bit more. So all in all, Mission Impossible, The Final Reckoning, I liked this movie, but I didn't love it. Tom Cruise as Ethan Hunt, once again, absolutely crushes it. He's the best action movie star in the modern day era. The guy's just fucking awesome. I love seeing how much he commits to this franchise and to this role. His crew, his friends, his comrades, they're all great once again. I do wish we got to see a little bit more of him and them working together more directly. Some characters have been brought back from other movies. Some that maybe I should have cared about a little bit more and didn't. Some that I wanted to root for or root against more, but I didn't really just care enough. I do like seeing more of a grand scale, just how big a threat the entity is. I do wish it didn't take almost 3 hours to tell the whole story, because frankly, I don't think it needed 3 hours. I really feel like you could have given us a 2 hour, even 2 hour, 15-minute movie, and it would have been pretty much the same thing, if not better, because it would have felt more well-paced. The final act of this movie is undeniably amazing. The stunt work, the action. I mean, the scenes I mentioned in particular, those two scenes, holy shit, bro. And in the end, if this is indeed the last Mission Impossible movie, or even the last one that will at least feature Tom Cruise, it is a satisfying conclusion. So with that, I will give Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning a 7 out of 10, which makes it worth checking out on the big screen for sure.
All right, come on, hurry up, Brian. I don't want to miss the movie trivia slides before the movie.
The question now becomes, where does it rank among the other Mission Impossible movies? For me personally, I would put it above 1, 2, and 3, but I don't think I can put it in the same class with Ghost Protocol Onward. Like, Ghost Protocol is one that won me over with this franchise. I think that movie's incredible, and I think the ones after it were incredible. This one feels a little bit more in that realm with the other three. Good, but not as amazing as I know this franchise is capable of being. Maybe that's just me, but hey, that's why you're here, to hear my opinion. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video, and as always, don't leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.